A warm welcome. You're tuned into Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Biahi. These are the top stories on the continent. In Cameroon, a military court quashes a 10-year jail sentence for Ahmed Abba, a journalist from our sister station Radio France Internationale. We bring you the very latest from our correspondent in Yaoundé. South Sudan's warring factions sign a new accord to cease hostilities in the latest bid to end the country's ongoing civil war. And with days to go before Christmas, many Nigerian families say they're finding it tough to celebrate the holidays. The shops, though, are trying to entice them with bigger and better bargains. We begin in Cameroon, where a military court has overturned a 10-year jail sentence for Ahmed Abba, a journalist from our sister station Radio France Internationale. Ahmed was arrested in July 2015 while he carried out research on Boko Haram insurgents. He was then charged with non-denunciation of terrorism and laundering the proceeds of terrorist acts. Our correspondent Zigoto Tchaya sent us this report from Yaoundé.
It was a big sigh of relief as Ahmed Abba burst into happy tears and hugged his defense team as well as other journalists who were present in the Court of Appeal this afternoon in Yaoundé, as we hear from the Assistant Director in charge of African News of Radio France Internationale.
We're overjoyed, we're all very happy. When we came out of the courtroom, I saw Ahmed and we hugged each other. We almost cried, tears of joy, of course.
Ahmed Abba was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment by the military tribunal in Yaoundé, but was acquitted today by the Court of Appeal and his prison term reduced to 24 months. It should be clarified that Ahmed Abba had already served a 30 months prison term, but still has a fine of 55 million francs CFA, which is 83,000 euros to pay before he is set free. But his defense team has vowed in the coming days to sort it out.
We're putting everything in place so that Ahmed gets out of this situation that he should have never been in the first place and can go back to his family. I hope everything is resolved by the new year.
Arrested on July 30th, 2015 in the far north region of Cameroon, Ahmed Abba had always pleaded not guilty of any link with the terrorist group Boko Haram, and today the Cameroon justice has just confirmed his innocence.
In other news on the continent, South Sudan's warring factions have signed a new accord to cease hostilities and protect civilians in the latest bid to calm the country's ongoing civil war. Well, the ceasefire is set to begin on Christmas Day and comes following talks in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa. The US has called the deal the last chance to implement a peace process. But even as the rival parties convened today, the government embarked on a fresh military campaign, prompting civilians to flee to neighbouring DR Congo. Simona Foltyn is at the border town of Abba. She sent us this report.
Once again, violence has forced hundreds of South Sudanese from their homes. Carrying whatever possessions they could grab, these civilians ran from what they describe as a government attack on the rebel stronghold of Lasu, located in the southern Equatoria region.
The soldiers are coming from here. They are burning houses, they are shooting people with a gun, and they are destroying everything from Lasu.
The government's victory in Lasu is the latest in a series of military gains that appear to undermine diplomatic efforts to negotiate a political solution. The high-level revitalization forum began in Addis Ababa earlier this week in an effort to revive a peace deal that was signed in 2015. But even as the warring parties sit down to talk, hundreds of people have fled a fresh government offensive near the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm currently at the border and I can see smoke rise from villages that have been attacked. Not everyone was lucky enough to escape unharmed. When he tried to run, government soldiers opened fire on this young man. He believes they mistook him for a rebel soldier.
I tried to turn from the soldiers, but they started shooting. They fired 3 bullets and the 4th one hit me in the shoulder.
For Helen Awate and her 6 children, this is the 3rd time they've had to run for their lives. Helen has little faith that peace negotiations in Addis Ababa can bring about real change.
The government has been talking for a long time, but they are not implementing anything. There is no change. People are still suffering in the bush, no matter what they are discussing there.
Unless the government withdraws from Lasso as part of a ceasefire agreement, the rebels have vowed to launch a counter-offensive. For these refugees, there's little chance of returning to their homeland anytime soon.
Next, French judges have concluded an inquiry into the missile attack that triggered Rwanda's 1994 genocide and must now decide whether the case should go to trial or not. The missile attack on a plane killed Rwanda's then-president, Juvenal Habyarimana, and sparked violence that killed some 800,000 people, mostly Tutsis. Rwanda accuses France of complicity in the killings, owing to its support for Habyarimana's Hutu forces. France says members of a Tutsi militia headed by Rwanda's current president, Paul Kagame, were to blame. Ugandan MPs have voted overwhelmingly to scrap the age limit of 75 for presidential candidates. The move paves the way for President Yoweri Museveni to run for a sixth term in office. After 3 days of rowdy debates, the highly contentious bill passed with 315 votes for, 62 against and 2 abstentions. The legislation will pass into law once it's signed by President Museveni. Under the current law, the 73-year-old leader would have been ineligible to run for office again in 2021. The newly elected head of South Africa's ruling ANC party has called for unity and an end to corruption in politics. Cyril Ramaphosa's words came as he closed the ANC's party conference following delays and a bruising leadership battle. Ramaphosa was elected to head up the ANC on Monday, replacing President Jacob Zuma. Analysts say he's now in a prime position to be elected as South Africa's next leader. Here's Ramaphosa speaking earlier in his maiden speech as ANC chief.
We are called upon to act against corruption. As our declaration says, we are also called upon to act against collusion and other economic crimes prevalent in both the public sector as well as the private sector. This conference has resolved that this must be acted upon and it must come to a stop. Corruption has to be brought to a stop.
Now, with Christmas just days away, many Nigerian families say they're really feeling the pinch. Now, the West African nation is still emerging from a recession, while many civil servants are facing ongoing salary delays. Traders, though, say they're desperately trying to get customers through the doors. France 24's Clément Bonnereau has this report.
It's only a few days until Christmas, and yet few shoppers are out looking for presents at this popular market in Abuja. This despite major discounts to attract customers.
We have beautiful things around us, but costly. Things are costly. Maybe we came in now to buy some teacups that we used to buy 150. Each now is 450 naira.
Nigeria emerged from its worst recession in decades last September. Recovery has so far been slow and fragile. Inflation remains high at 20%, and many civil servants have not been paid for months.
Everywhere is almost empty and scanty. There are not much people who are patronizing sellers. There are not even much people also in the market to buy because there is no money. The economy is so bad, terribly bad this year.
Economic difficulties have not stopped some Nigerians from getting into the Christmas spirit. 300 kilometres south of Abuja, residents of Makurdi came out to watch the traditional Mamai Wata parade held in honour of a water goddess. The performance draws visitors from across the country.
When I'm watching the dance, I feel so excited, I feel happy. In fact, the Mamai Wata dance is the spirit. It has the spirit of Christmas in it.
Many in Nigeria are hopeful that 2018 will bring better prospects, health, joy and prosperity for everyone.
You're up to date with your Eye on Africa news. More international headlines coming up. Stay tuned.
Before you set out, you plan to capture every moment.